Hi everybody, welcome to Beyond the Lines. My name is Sarah. Blah. See? Nothing works with this video. Again. Welcome to Beyond the Lines. My name is Sarah. I'm the artist behind Pinselgeschichten. And today I have a hiccup video for you. For one, I'm coloring in the Outlander coloring book. Started with this page. That was last week. I did film all the underpainting, everything, and I wanted to edit the video today for you to see later this week. And I realized all my footage is corrupted. I couldn't get to the data, so I quickly decided, okay, I'm gonna have a little bit of a recap video for you today and start shading already on the second layer. So I'm gonna talk to you about what I did last week while filming and what kind of physical principles I worked on and what I wanted to go for this page. And then I'm gonna start shading a little bit with colored pencils. The video this week is way shorter than usual because this is not my usual filming day and I just don't have any more time, so I'm sorry about that. I'm gonna make sure my video files are okay, triple check everything before I delete anything of my camera in the future. The blog post will be up an hour after this video is live, and the materials from last week's filming session, so the neo colors that you don't see me put down on this painting, as well as the colored pencils, will be listed. So it will be one blog post for actually 2 sessions of coloring. I hope you can forgive me. I'm gonna be back with my usual, well, less improvised kind of a video next week. So I hope you enjoy anyways. So there we go. This is not the video I wanted for you guys. As I had said in the intro, my footage is gone from all of this. I don't know. It's broken. I can't repair it. I can't use it. So I'm, improvising here a bit. So what I'm going to do first is tell you why I colored the things I did the way I did before I start adding the second layer for a tiny little bit, and that will be the video for this week. I'm sorry you couldn't see the process of this. I really tried to repair everything and yeah, it just didn't work. But I started with neo colors on this one, and I'm gonna read you the text that goes with this particular page, and it says, "It was clear that Geillis knew her business as an herbalist. The room was equipped with long drying frames netted with gauze, hooks above the small fireplace for heat drying, and open shelves along the walls, drilled with holes to allow for air circulation. The air was thick with the delicious spicy scent of drying basil, rosemary, and lavender. A surprisingly modern long counter ran along one side of the room, displaying a remarkable assortment of mortars, pestles, and mixing bowls and spoons, all immaculately clean." So we are in Geillis's working room where she prepares all the herbs. And I decided I wanted to have a rather dark-ish room because, well, back in the day, they didn't have the lofts that we have today. There's 2 windows here, and these are the light sources I took for my first layer of color and shading. It's quite subtle. It's a little more pronounced here on the carpet, but up here on the wood, it's way, way less pronounced. And I decided I wouldn't have any other light source like off screen, off frame. So I just went with these 2. It's daylight outside, so there's a little light coming in on this. The light cone is something like this. for this particular window here, and I started shading everything with Van Dyke brown here in between the windows because there's no light coming in here. There's also a little Van Dyke shadow here underneath the bowls and the jars, as is here on the bucket and that particular jar. I went with the same principle for the other window. So there's a light cone here. You can see the shadows do come in back here underneath that table. And I also shaded the roof. Like you can see here, there's a very light brown only. This is actually Van Dyke. I shaded with raw umber. I'm sorry. I misspoke earlier. And the same goes here for the light brown section and the wooden beams. I did color them with a brown shade. It's called brown. And then went over it with the raw umber from the right hand side and pulled in a little bit of pigment to have the beams on the right hand side be lighter than on the left hand side. Anything else I didn't shade. It's just one layer of color because the plan is to use colored pencils on top to add details and shading. And when it comes to deciding what colors I used, I wanted to have a cool brown for the background and some of the warmer browns and ochres here for the sideboard, for the apothecary sideboard and also here for this particular one. I think I used cinnamon for this one, and I chose a few of the lighter grays for anything metal, a few of the darker grays. I think, if I remember correctly, because it's been a couple of days since I filmed it, it was Payne's Gray that I used and sepia for the pottery stuff, and also here the pestle and mortar, as well as the lower parts of the candlesticks, so that like the candle holder. And I used beige for the carpet and the candles themselves, and I went with moss green and chromium oxide green for most of the green herbs here, and I added a little bit of a dark green, mixed them together, anything that I had on the palette that was of a green color, and used them for other herbs like the darker ones here. These four bunches are lavender. I made them to be lavender, and I used any color that I had on the palette to color some of the jars here and bottles and such. I brought in crimson red, I think it was, for some of the bottles, because I wanted those to be the color pop against all of the brownish kind of background. So the foreground is these big jars down here, and anything else is midground / background. So I knew from the start I had a lot of brown going in, so I wanted a few little colors to pop, and that's why I went with the purple from the lavender, the light blue from the sky, and a little bit of a red to have the color pops and not have the painting look too monochromatic in the end, because it's a lot of brown, guys. I can't deny it's lots and lots of browns. So now that I have this quick recap in for you, I'm gonna zoom you in a tiny bit, because this is quite the fiddly page. Objects are quite small, so I think it's just easier for you guys to see when I zoom you in a bit, so you know what the layout of the page is. And I want to start adding detail, and for that I chose my polychromos. They're to the left and to the right of my page. Ooh, talking. Ay. Sorry. Gosh. And I will start with these bottles here, just working to the left and starting with the foreground this time round, not with the background. And the first thing I want to shade are the red bottles and jars. And I'm gonna use middle cadmium red to do so. I have very small objects here, and since they're not in the foreground, I'm only gonna shade so much. I'm not gonna bother doing like every little minute detail, but I still want to add a little bit of a shadow nonetheless. I will also bring in a second tone right away, which is Indian red, and darken up some of these bits here. I'm really sorry I lost the footage of the first video. I was quite bummed because, well, I like to show the whole process, but there's nothing I can do, guys. I tried everything. I didn't have the footage on my camera anymore because I had already deleted it and made space for other filming footage, so I couldn't re-import, and I still had the audio on my audio equipment. I could have gotten those files, but me telling you things about something you can't see is nonsensical, I'd say. So I opted for this way of catching you up on this page, and I will hopefully not have this situation come up again, because that would make me quite mad. So I gotta spend a couple of extra hours today or this week on filming, where I thought I'd only be editing, and I was kind of proud of myself that I had already filmed this part last week and had it in the can and everything was awesome, and then it wasn't. So yeah. By the way, if you hear background noise, that's my lovely roommate coming home from grocery shopping, because he said he would be a very lovely roommate and do that task for me to grant me some more time to work on things. So he just came home, and you will hear him put away groceries, because that is what you do.
I'm as quiet as possible.
That's very lovely. Thank you very much. What a nice person. But it's fine if they hear you. I mean, you don't have to tiptoe around.
I have a beautiful voice, and
yeah, you can talk with them, sure. Or talk to me and they can listen. Whatever you prefer, that's totally fine. Are you
okay? As quiet as possible.
Are you okay? Did you hurt yourself?
No.
Okay, well, then everything's fine. So now I'm moving on to my blue bottles, and for that I chose Jesus Christ, I can't talk. Ultramarine blue, just to shade it a bit, and I'm shading towards the right hand side because this is where most of the bottles are closer to the wall and a little less in the cone of light. So that is why, and I just need a tiny little bit of the blue here, really not that much. This is not foreground, this is not where the focus is at, and I want to shade the foreground a little more, so I need to have space to develop a difference between the amount of layers of shading. So I can't go all out on the background, otherwise it would be very, very difficult to distinguish them from the foreground. Now onto the purple. I think I want to stay with another blue, a cobalt blue in this case. I don't want to use a purple to shade, so I'm gonna just go with cobalt blue over all of the purple bits. I think I used periwinkle of the Neo colors to color that. I'm not all that sure though. Well, it's been a couple of days since I filmed the other video, and I don't remember all of the names of the crayons I used, but they are listed on the blog, so you can look them up. The webpage is listed in the description box below. It's pinselgeschichten.de, and 1 hour after this video is published, the blog post will go live, so you can read up on that. So I'm gonna move on to the other jars here, using the same amount of the same shades of color. But this time around I'm going to shade from the left because the light is coming from the right. So that part of the jars will be lighter. Because physics, it is hit by light. So there's number 1. Also in the background, if you hear my washing machine, yeah, I was actually doing housework today and doing all my chores that I had to do, and I hadn't expected that I had to film with audio. So you're gonna hear my washing machine in the background. But I guess that is just life, and I'm not gonna complain. And then I'm going to move on to the saffron, or I think it was saffron, but it could also be cinnamon, I'm not sure. Moving on to those bits. So for one, this jar here. I'm also gonna bring in, I think it's called terracotta. Is it? No, sanguine. Yeah, the first one was terracotta. I'm gonna use sanguine to just intensify some of the shadows here, some of the color, because this is what I would call mid-ground. It's not this big cluster of jars, but it is close enough so that it gets a little more of a shading treatment. I've been actually filming this morning coloring because it's March, so it's the 30-day coloring challenge, and I had already colored and filmed my part for today. You can see it on Saturday. It's gonna be in the vlogs. So if you tune in on Talk O'Clock, you will see what I did there. And I had terracotta on it. I used the terracotta pencil, but I didn't use audio, so that's why I said I wasn't planning on filming with audio equipment today. So this is burnt sienna, and I'm just gonna put it towards the bottom a little more, because this is where things are a little darker, and just a smidge up here. Okay, on to the other small objects that are not foreground. I'm gonna totally disregard the foreground for now, though I would use the same color spectrum on it. But I'm just doing all the background and midground first and the foreground last. So there's a few more terracotta jars here. Again, I'm starting shading on the left hand side because the light comes from the right. This is in the cone of light of the second window. And the same goes for this one down here. This page, by the way, will be a sucker when it comes to shading the background because it's so repetitive. Even when I was base coloring everything with the neo colors, the background was hideous. So that's gonna be something when it comes to coloring the background. But well, that's life, I guess. So I'm gonna use a couple of shades for the silver stuff now, or the metal stuff, and I'm gonna start with Cool Gray 5, Indigo, and Payne's Gray. So let's go for the silver stuff, starting excuse me, starting with this bowl here, whatever this is supposed to be. Just gonna start shading from the bottom because the cone of light hits the object on the top. So there's not really any shadow, but there's one on the lower hand side. Now adding even a little more of a cooler tint with my Payne's Gray. And because I can and I like it so much, there is a little bit of a indigo coming in, just a smidge. Very little only. Don't want this to look too blue, but it does add a little bit of oomph. And yep, that's a technical term. So, yeah. Now onto the bucket. The bucket will be shaded from the bottom and towards the middle. Like so, and again Payne's Gray on top. And just a smidge of indigo here on the lower part. Very little only. And then I'm gonna need a light gray just to blend things a bit into the neo colors. And I'm gonna take the darker gray to have a little bit of the shadow here, the inner side of the bucket, but not too much because it is hit by light. On to the candle holder. I'm gonna use Payne's Gray right away because this is a very small and fiddly object and I don't need to have two different layers of gray there. And I'm gonna add a bit of indigo. That was the color. Before I go to the, oh, am I in frame? Shit, I'm not, I'm sorry. Before I go to this candle holder, I'm gonna take care of the distilling machine, and this one is a little bigger one, and it's completely in the shadow part, but there's a little bit of light bouncing off of the floor. So I'm gonna bring in my cool gray from the sides. And then have Payne's Gray on top. And just a tiny bit of indigo. I'm really looking forward to the next episode of Outlander. It already aired because it's Monday that I'm filming, and later today I should get a notification that it is available on iTunes, that I can watch a new episode, and then I'm gonna do so. I already have my podcasts lined up to listen to afterwards, and I'm very curious. I'm looking forward to it. So this is the part where the light bounces back, so I'm gonna keep this just a little bit lighter and not color it, and move forward with Payne's Gray on the next section here. Just to already let you know, this is gonna be a little bit of a shorter episode because I actually hadn't planned to film today, and I don't have too many hours left to do so, so I still have other things to take care of. So this will be an hour max. I'm really sorry, guys. It's I'm quite frustrated / sad about me losing the footage. Now onto this big pot. Again, there is light bouncing off, so I'm gonna proceed just the way I did with this particular part of the distilling machine. I think once I'm done with this, I can do laundry and have a lovely jump cut in the video, because I have another load to wash. There's already 3 loads on the dryer, like on the drying rack. We don't have a dryer, so I was kind of busy this morning, filming, coloring, doing housework. And I thought that I would only edit the video for Thursday and that would be the last thing I did for work today. But no, I can't even finish the pot. I very quickly have to go for a jump cut. The last load is in the washer. Yada-da. And I can move on coloring, and I'm putting Payne's Gray on top. And of course, there's gonna be indigo. Am I in frame? Yes. I really have to remind myself of checking, because, well, usually I don't zoom in a lot when I do these pages, because the objects are big enough so you can see well enough, I guess. And I don't have to think about, okay, am I in frame? Do I just can color wherever on a page. But that's not the case today. So I gotta remind myself of checking and checking and checking. All right, on to the pestle and mortar, which I'm not gonna shade a lot because it is exactly in the cone of light, but it has a little bit of a shadow. It needs a little bit of contrast and finishing, so I'm just gonna shade it a tiny bit from the left, because the right hand side contains the light source. So of course I'm gonna bring it in from the left, and not too much because it is, well, quite bouncing of that light, something like that. And then I can move on to the second candlestick. I'm doing just the same as before, going in with Payne's Gray right away. And it is in the dark, so I can go pretty dark on it. There's no light bouncing off. Maybe a little bit on the top, but only very, very little. And this is a very small object, so I'm just gonna shade it completely. There we go. Again, I'm leaving out the focal point for now. So I've got all the tiny objects. I can now move on with the herbs. So I'm gonna take a purple first. Mauve is the one I chose. I'm just going to add a little bit of a squiggle here and there to add some interest. On the lavender, and just have a little bit more of a color pop. Don't have to be too precise, just squiggle here and there. And a little less back here, but still some, because this is even further away, so it's all going to be a purple blur to the viewer. That's that already. I don't need any more. And I'm moving on to green things, and I'm starting with chromium green opaque. And again, I'm just adding a little bit of a squiggle. Just to add some interest and some depth to the herb bunches. And I'm also going to use this green on another part. Do I? We'll see. I'm gonna go in with permanent green first and add a little bit of shadow to this bunch. I still want some of the neocolor layer to show. So I'm not coloring it completely, like all the way, but adding a few ellipses of pigment here and there and some squiggles will just help with making this look a little more finished, a little more sophisticated. I will probably also add another little more of a darker green, and I'm looking at pine green, which is a little more of a cooler shade than the permanent green, but it's not really on the cold part of the spectrum, so they just do work really well together, those two shades. Like so. And I'm gonna use the same color combo on the next big bunch. So again, permanent green, squiggle, squiggle, squiggle. This has a different kind of a shape, so I don't need to have ellipses as much, but can go with straight-ish lines. And with these very tiny objects, I find that you just gotta suggest to the viewer what they see, and their brain does the rest. I don't have to meticulously color every single leaf. I just gotta give the impression of a bunch of herbs hanging there, and that saves me quite a bit of working time. And by working this unprecisely, does also tick another box, which is, hey, this is background, folks, so it gives the impression of being a little more blurry, a little further away from the viewer, and thus it indicates right away that this is the background. I'm also going to use the same pine green here on these other bunches in the back, on some of them at least. And I'm just following the lead of the ink lines in the way that I put down pigment. Am I in frame? Ish. Guys. I'm also going to introduce another green, which is olive green, yellowish, for another herb bunch here in the front. It has a little more of a brownish tint. And I'm going to put the dark green on top. Just squiggles, nothing fancy here. And I'm gonna turn my page and do the same thing for a couple of other bunches of herbs. As soon as I moved my book the way it needs to be moved. For example, this one here. And this one here. For the next one, or the couple of bits here in between, I'm gonna take the juniper green, which is an earthy but a little more of a cooler green. Gonna add detail like that. And the smaller the herb bunch, the less I do care about the way that I color. I just squiggle their background. I'm not gonna bother doing very sophisticated coloring work there. But it's a little different here on this bigger bunch of herbs. For one, it is closer to the viewer. And second, it has quite the big leaves, so I'm going to use ellipses and little circles to color part of the leaves. And also add something on the stems, taking my dark green again, adding it on top. And then I move on to the juniper green for the bunch next to it. This looks kind of like arugula or tarragon maybe, I don't know. And doing the same here on this bunch, going in circles this time around. And on this one I'm gonna add the dark green too, so combine those two colors that I had used in other parts of the page, of the herb bunches. Okay, give it a check. All right, looking good. What does the time say? Okay, I've got another 10 minutes of filming time. I know that there's a break in between and it's not gonna be a full hour of video. But like I said, I need to have quite a bit of time today. Oh, excuse me, to work on other things. So I only can spend a whole hour of filming. Doesn't mean that there's a full hour of footage there. So I'm using a warm gray 6 to shade the candles a bit. Like so. And then I can move on to the brown stuff. Or no, let's go with the light blue window part first. And I think after I have the window done, I'm gonna end the video and continue next week. And then hopefully it will be a better put together video. So I'm just going around these frames here and shade from the right hand side, so it's to the right and to the bottom, because I think those windows are maybe a little bit curved, or well, not flat, so you might have a little bit of a different kind of look when it comes to how the light bounces off of things, and if something looks maybe a little distorted. There we go. It's just very subtle, but it doesn't need that much. And I'm gonna use Payne's Gray for these beams here on the window. I'm just partly gonna color them, and the rest I'm gonna leave with the raw umber underpainting. Gonna add the line to the window frame as well, so that I remember, Or that I don't have to remember that I used Payne's Gray for that crisscross part here. But I'm gonna have it down right away. Like so. I will shade the window frame a little more, but that's gonna be probably in next week's video. So I thank you very much for watching and your understanding that this page was just a little fucked up. I'm sorry about my French. I'm gonna see you next week with a new video. Loads and loads more colored pencils are gonna be used on this one. And I will make sure that I triple check where my footage is and if it works before I delete anything from the camera in the future. So learned a lesson here. I thank you for watching. If you liked this video, I would love for you to give it a thumbs up. Though it's not as well put together as usual. But I'm gonna see you in a week. I hope you have some time for coloring and enjoying any type of creative work. And I'm gonna see you next time. Bye.